Section 6 of New Discoveries at Jamestown. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. New Discoveries at Jamestown by John L. Connor and J. Paul Hudson. Section 6. Farming. The first settlers brought seeds from England and planted wheat 2 weeks after landing at Jamestown. The early Virginians successfully grew many kinds of crops: grain, wheat, Indian corn, barley, oats, and rye; vegetables, peas, beans, turnips, parsley, onions, potatoes, cabbage, cauliflower, carrots, parsnips, lettuce, and others; and fruits: apples, peaches, apricots, quince, figs, grapes, and melons. The colonists planted Indian corn as early as 1609 and cultivated many other Indian foods, including pumpkins, beans, and squash. They cultivated tobacco, an Indian plant, as early as 1612, and during the remainder of the century it was the most profitable crop grown. For many years it was the economic salvation of the struggling colony. Attempts were made by the early colonists to grow other crops which, for various reasons, did not thrive at Jamestown. Some plants, like bananas, pineapple, citrus fruits, and pomegranates, could not withstand the cold Virginia winters. Other plants, including rice, cotton, indigo, sugarcane, flax, hemp, and olives, did not grow vigorously for one reason or another, and repeated efforts to cultivate them usually resulted in failure. Mulberry trees grew well at Jamestown. The leaves were used to feed silkworms, but attempts to make silk were not successful commercially. Illustration caption: tools used in the cultivation of tobacco over 300 years ago. These tools, hoe, billhook, and cutting knives, were excavated at Jamestown. End of caption. Illustration caption: cultivating a small garden in Virginia. Conjectural sketch by Sidney E. King. End of caption. Illustration caption: a few farm tools used by an early settler for cultivating his newly cleared land. End of caption. Illustration caption: fishing provided food as well as recreation for the colonists. Conjectural sketch by Sidney E. King. End of caption. Illustration caption: a few of the many artifacts relating to fishing unearthed at Jamestown: fish hooks, fish gigs, and lead net weights. End of caption. Hand tools used by the Jamestown farmers during the 17th century have been found in abundance. These include axes, picks, billhooks, pitchforks, spades, rakes, mattocks, sickles, scythes, broad hoes, narrow hoes, and shovels. Only a few parts belonging to heavy farming equipments have been unearthed, including a few plowshares and small metal fragments from wagons, carts, and harrows. Fishing. When the first settlers planted their small colony at Jamestown, the tidewater rivers and bays and the Atlantic Ocean bordering the Virginia coast teemed with many kinds of fish and shellfish which were both edible and palatable. Varieties which the colonists soon learned to eat included sheep's head, shad, sturgeon, herring, sole, white salmon, bass, flounder, pike, brim, perch, rock, and drum, as well as oysters, crabs, and mussels. Seafood was an important source of food for the colonists, and at times, especially during the early years of the settlement, it was the main source. Those in England who planned to go to Virginia were always advised to provide themselves, among other items, with nets, fish hooks, and lines. During archaeological explorations, fish hooks, lead net weights, fish gigs, and small anchors were uncovered. These are reminders of a day when fish and shellfish were abundant in every tidewater Virginia creek, river, and bay. Health. Keeping well and healthy, even managing to stay alive in the unfamiliar Virginia wilderness during the first 2 decades of the Jamestown settlement, was no easy matter. In the group of 105 original settlers, 67 died during the first 8 months. During the hard winter of 1609 to 1610, known as the Starving Time, the population dwindled from 500 to about 60 as a result of sickness, Indian attacks, and famine. One of the members of the first colony was a surgeon, William Wilkinson by name. As the colony grew, other surgeons, physicians, and apothecaries emigrated to Virginia. Their lot was not easy, for it appears that they were seldom idle in an island community having more than its share of cruel diseases, swellings, flixes, burning fevers, wars, and mere famine. During archaeological explorations, drug jars, ointment pots, bleeding bowls, mortars and pestles, small bottles and vials, and parts of surgical instruments were recovered. These undoubtedly were used countless times at Jamestown by unknown chirurgeons, doctors of physics, and apothecaries, men who tried to keep the colonists well with their limited medical equipment and scant supply of drugs. Amusements and pastimes. The difficult and time-consuming job of conquering the Virginia wilderness, clearing the land, building homes, planting and harvesting crops, and warding off Indian attacks, left few hours for leisure and amusements. There were times, however, especially after the first few hard years had passed, when a colonist could enjoy himself by smoking his pipe, playing a game, practicing archery, bowling, playing a musical instrument, singing a ballad, or taking part in a lively dance. Excavated artifacts reveal that the settlers enjoyed at least these few amusements and pastimes. Illustration caption. A physician bleeding a patient. Conjectural sketch by Sidney E. King. End of caption. Illustration caption. A few items unearthed at Jamestown which were used by doctors and apothecaries included our drug jars, ointment pot, bleeding bowl, mortar and pestle fragments, glass vials, and portions of surgical instruments. End of caption. Illustration caption. Enjoying a smoke in a tavern about 1625. Conjectural sketch by Sidney E. King. End of caption. Illustration caption. A few of thousands of clay pipe fragments unearthed at Jamestown. The ones shown range in date from 1600 to 1700. During this 100-year period, pipes developed from small bowls to fairly large ones. End of caption. Smoking. The first colonists were quite familiar with the use of tobacco, and it is believed that many of them smoked clay pipes. Evidently there was some demand for tobacco pipes by the early planters, as one of the men, Robert Cotton, who reached Jamestown in January 1608, was a tobacco pipe maker. In 1611 to 1612, John Rolfe had experimented with tobacco plants in Virginia. He used Virginia plants as well as varieties from the West Indies and South America, and was successful in developing a sweet-scented leaf. It became popular overnight, and for many years was the staple crop of the infant colony. There was a prompt demand for the new leaf in England, and its introduction there was an important factor in popularizing the use of clay pipes. After 1620, the manufacture of white clay pipes in England increased by leaps and bounds. It is estimated that there are over 50,000 clay pipe bowls and stem fragments in the Jamestown collection, perhaps the largest assemblage of its kind extant. Pipe bowls and stem fragments were found wherever excavations were made, indicating that the smoking of clay pipes was an extremely popular custom at Jamestown. During the 1607 to 1700 period, pipe bowls developed in size from small to fairly large. In most examples that have been found, the early pipes have larger stem holes than pipes made during the latter years of the century. Although the majority of pipes found at Jamestown were imported from England, some were made in Holland. Some of the colonists made their pipes in Virginia from local clay, either by pipe-making machines or by hand molding. The English and Dutch pipes were white in color, whereas the local product was brown. As they were fragile, not a single complete pipe has been unearthed at Jamestown. Illustration caption: Harvesting tobacco at Jamestown about 1650. Painting by Sidney E. King. End of caption. Illustration caption: Children's games depicted on Dutch Delftware fireplace tiles are very similar to the games children play today. The tiles were made in Holland almost 300 years ago. End of caption. Games. A few ivory fragments that have been excavated appear to be parts of dice and chessmen. Chess was popular during the 17th century, and many dice games, including even and odd, hazard, passage, mumchance, and novem were played. Other games which undoubtedly were played in many Jamestown homes were tic-tac, backgammon, Irish, and cards. Card games were popular, especially primero, trump, piquet, saint, and decoy. Many 17th century fireplace tiles in the Jamestown collection are decorated with charming little pictures depicting children's games. Activities portrayed include skating, bowling, spinning tops, fishing, rolling hoops, using a yo-yo, swinging, wrestling, skipping rope, shooting, playing skittles, riding a hobby horse, sledding, boxing, and playing musical instruments. These pictures remind us that games played by boys and girls today are very similar to those enjoyed by children 3 centuries ago. Illustration caption: Archaeological explorations revealed that the colonists enjoyed archery. The iron lever shown, known as a goat's foot, was used for setting the string of a light hunting crossbow. It was found 4 miles from Jamestown. Illustration showing the use of a goat's foot from weapons, a pictorial history, by Edwin Tunis. End of caption. Archery and hunting. One interesting item relating to archery has been found 4 miles from Jamestown. Known as a goat's foot, it is an iron lever which was used for pulling back and setting the string of a light hunting crossbow. Contemporary records indicate that hunting game birds and animals was a popular New World diversion. Such sport served a twofold purpose, as it offered recreation to the settler and helped provide food for his table. Parts of early fowling pieces and numerous lead bird shot, called goose or swan shot during the early years of the 17th century, have been recovered. Music and dancing. A large assortment of iron and brass Jew's harps, also known as Jew's trumps, have been found. This small instrument is lyre-shaped, and when placed between the teeth gives tones from a bent metal tongue when struck by the finger. Modulation of tone is produced by changing the size and shape of the mouth cavity. As there is no record of spinets or virginals having been used at Jamestown, we have no way of knowing whether such wire-stringed keyboard instruments were used in the homes of the more prosperous planters, together with other musical instruments of the period. It is quite certain, however, that the Jamestown settlers knew the songs and ballads which were sung in Great Britain in those days. They were also familiar with English, Irish, Welsh, and Scotch dances. A few contemporary accounts reveal that the Virginia colonists enjoyed merry tunes and ditties, as well as lively dances. Although living in a wilderness, there were times when they could enjoy a few leisure hour activities and amusements, including singing and dancing. Illustration caption: Playing a Jew's harp, enjoying a little music in the Virginia wilderness. Conjectural sketch by Sidney E. King. End of caption. Illustration caption: An assortment of Jew's harps unearthed at Jamestown. End of caption. Illustration caption: A few items recovered at Jamestown which were once used on 17th century boats, reminders of a day when travel in Virginia was largely by water. End of caption. End of section 6.